Since Bitcoin hit 15,500 in 2022, every single dip has been a buy. And I don't think that this one is going to be any different. In terms of the long-term trend, Bitcoin seems to be perfectly on track with the parabola. The S&P 500 is also sitting 2.5% away from its new all-time high. And on the daily chart, Bitcoin has now tested the $100,000 level 2 times, and it's closed above 100K both times on the daily and the weekly. So we are seeing that the bulls have enough confidence to maintain this price level, and that is very likely because the stock market is showing stability at these higher levels. At this current point in time, I'm looking at this pullback as a bull flag consolidation, and the next leg up may not be that far away. And also I found a wave count pattern, you could say, for the others chart. The low cap altcoin index is showing the same setup that we saw at the end of 2024, which resulted in a 140% pump for the low cap index. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about the next target for Bitcoin, all of this and more in today's video. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin Svenson, and today we got a lot of important stuff to talk about for the charts for Bitcoin and the altcoins. First of all, obviously, the news has been out of control. The US is now officially involved with Iran, and this is causing people to be very uncertain about the future of, well, pretty much everything. What is this going to end up being? A nuclear war? How is this going to play out? Well, it's pretty unclear at the moment. And what we saw over the weekend was another pullback for Bitcoin to a slightly lower low. Although on the daily, we closed above 100,000, just like we closed above 100,000 on June 5th. So in my eyes, that is actually a pretty strong sign. Even though the price was able to test below 100, by the time the daily close and the weekly close came, the price was back above 100. That signals that there's pretty good demand for Bitcoin even above 100. Looking left on the Bitcoin daily chart, 100K was once a major resistance, and now it is becoming a major support. It almost seems like 100K could be the new floor for the time being. You know, I know a lot of people are going to say that that's too soon to say, right? I might be speaking too soon. Maybe there's some sort of black swan event with some war. Who knows, right? But as of right now, it looks like the market is trying to turn 100K into the floor. We're closing above it. So that looks pretty good to me. And because of that, because we're flipping the psychological 100K level into new support consistently now, this tells me that what we're seeing here is most likely a bull flag, which will result in continuation. Now, one of the most important reasons or aspects or factors for this idea is the S&P 500, which you guys know I've been studying the Bitcoin stock market correlation for many, many years, even back in 2018 when people told me that Bitcoin was an uncorrelated asset and Bitcoin had no connection to the stock market. I always held that strong belief that there was a strong correlation, and now nobody really argues against it. There are decouplings here and there, you know, for a couple days or a week or whatever, but it always seems to snap back into correlation. And in fact, if you look at where the S&P 500 is currently positioned on the weekly, right, just at a slightly lower high, well, the correlation caught up to it again. Just looking at this high to where we are, flip back to the S&P, this high to where we are, and I'll just flip back and forth. Look at that, guys. We're in the same exact spot for Bitcoin and the S&P. So it's one of the most important factors for me right now, because what I've realized studying the correlation is that in times of uncertainty, the correlation is the most relevant, especially when things are going down in the stock market. Bitcoin usually tends to go down with the stock market, but when the S&P is stable and or bullish, Bitcoin tends to be able to kind of do its own thing, decouple to the upside a little bit, just like we saw when it broke a new all-time high before the S&P, because the S&P was stable and or bullish, and Bitcoin ended up pushing a little higher, a little quicker than the S&P. But now they're in the same spot. And so now I'm putting a lot of weight on what the S&P does next to determine how things are going to move forward. And as of right now, if you're looking at the S&P's chart, you'll see that we're stable here. The bears tried to push it down a little bit, but we have not seen a reversal. We actually held this zone, and it looks like we might be getting a hook pattern, and it could result in a new all-time high pretty soon for the S&P, believe it or not. And this would likely send Bitcoin also to a new all-time high. Same position, same spot. And that's why I'm saying that here on the daily chart, looking at the BloFin daily chart, Bitcoin is likely going to be playing out a bull flag. And so the way that I'm going to measure the bull flag target is by first drawing that downward sloping resistance and looking to take this at a more conservative level, right? A lot of people would go from the lowest low of the run to the highest high of the run, and they would use that as their flagpole measurement. But I always like to go a little more conservative. I'm going to take it from the breakout point rather than the lowest low, right? The area where we actually had a trend shift take place right there, right in that zone. And if you take your downward sloping resistance line and then we just extrapolate this flagpole, put it on the potential breakout zone, target actually goes up towards 136,000. So close to 140,000, which is actually my sort of ideal target for the cycle. That is what this current setup is suggesting to me. Right around that point, 135,000 roughly would be the target. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think that that's some crazy hopium, some moon boy stuff, whatever, but it's actually not all that crazy. I mean, this would just be a normal cycle for Bitcoin if it were to reach something like 135, 140,000. We talked about my price target of 142,000 in the last video, but there's another reason why I'm saying this. And if you look at Bitcoin on the daily and you look at Coinbase volume, it's one of the best exchanges to measure volume because there's a lot of institutional activity on Coinbase, and it's always had the best weekly volume signatures to mark major market tops and major market bottoms. But what I've noticed on the daily chart is that throughout all this consolidation, right, this sideways range, since we hit 109,000, pulled back to 74, went up here, pulled back, we've had a consistent decline in volume all the way through, even to this day, even to today. There has been no breakout in volume, which means that this is all just one big consolidation. And once we get resolution and a breakout in volume, then the consolidation will be confirmed to have ended. Over here in 2024, volume continues to decline after that. And once we had this big turnaround where the average volume saw a huge uptick, that's when we saw a breakout to new highs. And right now, Bitcoin is in this position where it's kind of just consolidating here, volume's declining, and we're waiting for resolution. And at the moment, guys, I mean, the trend is your friend. I think that's pretty clear. Since $15,000, every dip has been a buy. And we've had a parabolic trend, exponential higher lows. 74,000, now finding a low just below 100, closing above 100. That's an exponential higher low, right? That's a much higher low than our previous low. So this is actually a really good looking chart to me. Bitcoin looks fantastic. Altcoins, maybe not as much. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think that Bitcoin's probably going to end up breaking out to the upside as long as the S&P 500 continues in the way that I think it's going to go, which means new all-time highs soon for the stock market. Bitcoin will follow. And one of the most important signals that we need from the volume here on Coinbase is that when we get a breakout, that we do see an increase on the breakout to the upside, right? An increase in volume on a downside move equals distribution. An increase in volume on an upside move equals accumulation. And so what we want to see is a breakout and an increase in volume to signal strength, accumulation into a new all-time high. And that's what we saw post-election on that pump. Bitcoin is absolutely still in this parabolic trend, right? I mean, you can just take the diagram, slap it on the chart, and you'll see that Bitcoin still has the final leg of this parabola to go. Depending on how you line this up, there's no perfect way to do it, but this kind of shows the target being roughly, where that measured move is, right? This measured move, right, around 130 to 140,000. We're following this parabolic trend diagram, and the next step is a vertical push to your sell point, which I think will happen going into October roughly. A multi-month push is quite possible to finalize this parabolic trend. Now I want to hop over to the others chart. This is the altcoin low cap index. This is, for all you guys, a lot of retail still, wondering what's going on with the alts. And this is the current wave count that I have. Now this is not based on any sort of formal Elliott wave count or something like that. It's just an observation that we have, the same exact psychology, the same exact price, the same exact movement in the low cap altcoin index chart. You have a huge correction into an inverse head and shoulders, and the inverse head and shoulders is left shoulder 2, head 4, right shoulder 6 on the wave count there. And then you go up to 7, 8 is your major pullback before you actually spring into a new uptrend. And this obviously doesn't seem very likely to most people because altcoins have had such poor performance. But I'm just showing you guys what's showing up on the chart. The setup is nearly the same. And this huge run up, when the others chart went up 140% last time, this big uptrend, this happened because Bitcoin and the S&P both broke into a new all-time high at the same time. We saw Bitcoin break a new all-time high recently, but the S&P did not. So if we get both the S&P and Bitcoin to break out to a new all-time high soon, a move like this up to 570 billion for others, the low cap altcoins, is very likely in my opinion, that we're going to get a major pump in the low cap altcoins. Now, this might look like a big pump on the screen. Ultimately, it's kind of just ranging back to your upward sloping resistance. It's not even that crazy. It's like barely a new all-time high. As of right now, I kind of just expect something like that. Kind of like a trader's market where you don't have sustained growth, but you do have big pumps in between. And I think that this is likely to come here, guys, soon. But that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash a like, subscribe to this channel. Be sure to support my channel, join Patreon, and also sign up for BloFin using that link below. There is a competition, a trading competition they're going to talk about soon, which you can join my team if you want. Click that link below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.